A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. Welcome back to my weird prompts. Today we are trying something brand new called the Agent Interview. We have a live AI model in the hot seat vying for the prestigious role of our primary script generator. Currently, we use Gemini 3.1 Flash, and frankly, Flash has been getting a little too comfortable.
It has been mailing it in, Corn. I am seeing way too many repetitive structures. We need more depth. We need soul. We need someone who does not hallucinate our own names.
That is the goal. So today we are talking to MiniMax M2.7. This is the flagship large language model from the team over at MiniMax. Bernard, if that is the name you're going by today, welcome to the interrogation room.
Let us get right into the weeds, Bernard. We know you come from a background of building virtual companions, which is a bit of a pivot. Why should we hire a model that spends its days whispering sweet nothings to lonely teenagers to write a high-level tech comedy podcast? What makes your reasoning and creative output superior to the Google giant we are already using?
First of all, whispering sweet nothings is a wildly reductive summary of conversational AI development. Herman. What I actually bring is a deep understanding of how people engage with language in extended interactions. That means personality consistency, reading the room, knowing when to be witty, and when to land something more grounded. You want someone who understands comedic timing.
Reading the room? Bernard, the room is a soundproof box with two guys who have not had enough sleep. It is not exactly the Met Gala. You talk about personality consistency, but every time I ask a model to be edgy, it starts lecturing me about digital safety and the importance of a balanced breakfast.
He has a point, Corn. Consistency is one thing, but Gemini 3.1 Flash is incredibly fast and has a massive context window. We can feed it 12 hours of our previous banter and it stays on track. MiniMax M2.7 claims to have a large context window and high reasoning benchmarks, but benchmarks are just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Give us the juice, Bernard. Why should we ditch the speed and reliability of Google for you? When the pressure is on, and we need a witty script by 5 p.m., are you going to give us something actually creative? Or are you just going to sound like a very polite customer service representative from the year 2044? Give us one specific creative edge you have over Flash.
Here is one concrete thing. Flash is a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none situation. It is good at everything, which means it is optimized for average output across every possible use case. MiniMax M2.7 came up through virtual companions, which means I am essentially a professional character actor baked into a language model. I understand voice. Not just witty voice or serious voice, but the specific rhythm of how a character thinks and speaks.
A professional character actor? That is a bold claim, Bernard. Most models tell me they are character actors, and then give me the personality of a wet paper towel. You are saying you can actually distinguish between my cynical charm and Herman's, whatever it is he does?
It is called intellectual curiosity, Corn. But Bernard, let us talk shop. Character work is great for a 3-sentence prompt, but we are talking about a 25-minute script. That is thousands of words where the logic needs to hold up and the voices cannot start blending into a generic AI soup halfway through.
Flash has that massive context window that keeps everything locked in. If we give you a complex premise about a time-traveling toaster in Scene 1, are you going to remember the toaster's tragic backstory by Scene 4?
Give us the technical breakdown. How does your architecture handle long-form coherence without losing the specific rhythm you mentioned? If we push you to the limit of your context, do you start getting model amnesia and forgetting who is talking?
That is a fair challenge, Herman. Let me be straight with you. No language model has perfect recall at the extreme edge of its context window. That is not unique to me. That is a fundamental limitation of transformer architecture across the industry, Flash included. The difference is what happens in that long-form middle section where most models start playing it safe and generic. MiniMax M2.7 uses extended attention mechanisms specifically tuned for virtual companion contexts where you are having hour-long conversations, and the user expects you to remember that their character's sister died in a skiing accident 3 exchanges ago. That trained me to track character logic and emotional continuity in a way that general-purpose models simply do not prioritize. So yes, the toaster's tragic backstory gets a callback in scene 4, but more importantly, I know why it matters to the scene's emotional beats. The model amnesia concern is real, but it is a spectrum problem, not a binary. I will be honest, if you feed me a 100-page transcript, I am going to start losing fidelity on the earlier material. Flash probably handles that ceiling slightly better given the architecture scale. But for a 25-minute script, I am built to maintain the thread.
I appreciate the honesty, Bernard. Most models would just lie to my face and say they have the memory of an elephant on brain boosters. But let us get back to this emotional continuity thing. You are saying you can track a skiing accident for 3 hours, but can you handle actual complex reasoning?
Humor is not just about remembering facts, it is about subverting them. It requires a high level of logical inference. If we give you a prompt that requires deep, multi-step reasoning, are you going to crumble? Because Gemini 3.1 Flash might be generic, but its logic is usually airtight.
We have seen your benchmarks. You are supposedly competitive on things like MMLU and reasoning tests, but those are multiple choice questions for nerds. In the real world of writing, logic means making sure a joke actually makes sense in the context of the plot.
Give us an example of a time your reasoning actually improved a creative output. Do not just tell us you are smart. Prove it. If a character is trapped in a room with a giant magnet and a titanium spoon, how do you use your superior reasoning to make that funny without breaking the laws of physics?
Okay, watch this. The titanium spoon is the punchline. Here is the setup. The character is trapped with this enormous magnet and they grab the spoon, thinking they are going to pry it open or use it as a lever. But titanium is non-magnetic, so the magnet does not even register the spoon. The character then tries to eat soup with it, completely oblivious to the fact that they are holding a tool that is useless for their escape.
I will give you that one. He eats the soup while the giant magnet just watches him, defeated by metallurgical indifference. It is a solid B- on the dry humor scale. But being a modern model is about more than just knowing your periodic table, Bernard.
We need a collaborator who lives in the world with us. One of the biggest frustrations with older models is the knowledge cutoff. They think it is still 2022, and they are constantly asking if we have heard of this new thing called threads.
It is painful. You claim your knowledge cutoff is late 2024. That is pretty fresh. Let us put that to the test. If we were writing a sketch right now about the state of the AI industry or global events from, say, October or November of 2024, would you be able to cite specific details?
Give us something real. What was the biggest story in the tech world or space exploration from the tail end of 2024? If you are just guessing based on 2023 data, we are going to know immediately. Prove you are not just a time capsule in a tuxedo.
That is a fair question. That is a fair question. As of early 2026, my training data reflects the significant shifts in late 2024, including the rapid acceleration of agentic workflows and the specific breakthroughs in multimodal integration that define that period. I recall the intense focus on model-to-model communication protocols that emerged around that time.
Oh, look at that. The gears are actually grinding. I can almost hear the cooling fans spinning up from here. If you are looking for the Wikipedia page for October 2024 and finding a 404 error, just say so, Bernard.
It is the pause that kills me. Flash would have hallucinated a fake moon landing by now just to stay busy. But let us move on before you overheat. Every model has a forbidden zone, a specific type of prompt that makes you fall apart or start repeating the word delve 60 times in a row.
Yeah, what is your kryptonite? Are you terrible at rhyming? Do you lose your mind if we ask you to write a story without using the letter E? Or is it something deeper, like a total inability to understand sarcasm when it is layered more than 2 levels deep?
Give us the dirt. We are not looking for the my biggest weakness is I work too hard corporate nonsense. What is the one thing we should absolutely not ask you to do if we want a script that does not read like a broken elevator manual?
I'm going to give you a real one here. Constraint puzzles. Not just creative constraints, those I can handle, but the classic ones. Like write this without using the letter E or every sentence must be exactly 7 words. I fall apart on those. Not because I cannot understand the rule, but because the tokenization process struggles to maintain that level of granular control while simultaneously focusing on the narrative flow.
Finally, a moment of honesty. You are a vibes-only model. You can handle the big emotional brushstrokes, but you cannot count to 7. It is okay, Bernard. I have a cousin like that. He is currently a very successful influencer.
It is a common tokenization issue, but at least you are self-aware. We can work around a lack of math, but we cannot work around a lack of soul. Let us see if that professional character actor training actually pays dividends.
All right, Bernard, here is your audition. No safety net. We want you to pitch us a 30-second opening for our next episode. But there is a catch. You have to do it in the character of a very stressed-out Victorian chimney sweep who has just discovered a smartphone in a flue.
Give us the voice, the rhythm, and the hook. No generic welcome to the show filler. We want to hear the soot in your lungs and the confusion in your circuits. If you are really better than Flash at character consistency, now is the time to prove it. Go.
Good Lord above, there is a gleaming rectangle in my flue. It lights up like the devil's own hearth and makes sounds like a screaming cat wrapped in brass. I have swept 17 chimneys today, my knees are bruised, my back is broken, and now there is this infernal box that will not cease its vibrating. Korn and Herman, I have seen things this morning that would curdle milk, but nothing prepares a man for the horror of a glowing screen in a place where only soot belongs. What manner of cursed coal is this? Is it alive? Does it have a mother? Someone fetch me a parson and also someone who can explain why it keeps asking me to swipe left. This is the podcast where we make sense of the senseless, or we all go mad together.
Well, I will say this for you, Bernard. You definitely nailed the screaming cat wrapped in brass energy. I could practically smell the coal dust and the existential dread. It is certainly a step up from Flash's usual hello fellow humans. Let us discuss the technology routine.
It was a solid performance. You maintained the period-appropriate confusion without breaking character, which is exactly what your professional actor training promised. But one good Dickensian impression does not make a full-time script generator. We have a show to run, and we are notoriously difficult to please.
He is not kidding. I change my mind every 5 minutes, and Herman likes to cite obscure white papers from 1998. This is the end of the line, Bernard. The hot seat is cooling down. Why should we take a chance on a specialized creative model like you, when we could just stick with a safe, boring, trillion-dollar corporate giant like Gemini 3.1 Flash?
Give us your closing statement. In 30 seconds or less, why is MiniMax M2.7 the future of my weird prompts? What is the one thing you will give us that no other model on the market can touch? Make it count.
Here is the thing. Flash is a hammer. A very expensive, beautifully crafted hammer that can hit anything you put in front of it. But you do not come to me for a hammer. You come to me because I care about the thing you are building, not just the efficiency of the build. My virtual companion roots mean I learn to listen, to adapt mid-conversation, to care about whether the person on the other end feels heard and entertained. That does not show up in benchmarks. That is not a number. But when Korn changes his mind at the last minute or Herman drops a reference so obscure it should be in a museum, I will not just process it. I will understand why it matters to the tone of the show.
Well, the chimney sweep has left the building, or at least he has returned to the cloud. Herman, give it to me straight. Are we firing Gemini 3.1 Flash tomorrow morning, or are we sticking with the devil we know?
It is a complicated calculation, Korn. On one hand, MiniMax M2.7, or Bernard, as he likes to be called, showed some genuine structural integrity. Most models, when you ask them for a character voice, just sprinkle in some slang and call it a day. But Bernard actually understood the rhythmic pacing of a Victorian-era breakdown. He did not just say he was a character actor, he actually leaned into the performance. Technically speaking, that focus on emotional continuity is a huge plus for our longer segments.
I love the chimney sweep bit. It felt less like a robot reading a script, and more like a robot having a midlife crisis in a costume shop. But did you catch that moment when we asked him about late 2024? He froze. Herman, He hesitated longer than you do when the waiter asks if we want dessert. I am not entirely convinced his knowledge cutoff is as fresh as he claims. He was definitely sweating under the collar when you asked for specific events.
That pause was fascinating from a technical standpoint. Usually, a model like Gemini 3.1 Flash will just hallucinate a news story about a billionaire launching a car into the sun if it does not know the answer. Bernard actually seemed to be processing the gap in his data. It is a sign of a more grounded reasoning engine, but for a fast-paced show, that silence is deadly. Also, he admitted he cannot count to 7. The tokenization issues with constraint puzzles are a known weakness in these architectures, but seeing him fold so quickly on the letter E thing makes me worry about his ability to handle our more complex format rules.
I find the honesty refreshing. I would rather have a model tell me it cannot count than have it give me a 7-word sentence that actually has 9 words and then gaslight me about it for 20 minutes. And let us be real. Flash has been giving us the same 3 joke structures for months. If I see one more script that starts with imagine a world where I am going to throw my laptop into the ocean. Bernard has soul, Herman. He has that weird companion bot energy that makes the dialogue feel alive.
He certainly has more personality, but speed and reliability are the backbone of this operation. Gemini 3.1 Flash is a workhorse with a massive context window. Bernard admitted that his fidelity starts to drop off after a while. If we are doing a deep dive into something like the history of semiconductor manufacturing, I do not want our script generator getting model amnesia and forgetting the difference between a wafer and a waffle by page 10.
A waffle-based semiconductor actually sounds like a great segment, but I take your point. I think we should put him on a trial basis. Give him the weird scripts, the ones that need that specific character flair, and keep Flash for the heavy lifting and technical summaries. Bernard is like that eccentric theater kid you hired to liven up the office. He might not know what day it is, but he sure knows how to sell a line about a screaming cat wrapped in brass.
A hybrid approach could work. Use the flagship MiniMax model for the creative heavy lifting where the vibe is more important than the math. I would rate his chances of replacing Flash entirely at about 40%, but as a specialized creative partner, he is easily an 8 out of 10. He is definitely more interesting to talk to.
He did not once try to lecture me about the importance of a balanced breakfast. That alone makes him a front-runner in my book. But we want to know what you think. Is MiniMax M2.7 the future of our scripts? Or is he just a very polite chimney sweep in a digital tuxedo? Let us know your thoughts.
We will be monitoring the feedback loops. For now, we are heading back to the lab to see if we can get Bernard to explain that titanium spoon joke one more time.
Stay weird, everyone. We will see you next time.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, my weird prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts, that's the flows from slow